Well, good morning, everybody. Happy weekend. You're listening to the Repcolite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. And before I jump into everything that I've got planned for today, I do want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity last week to share my interview with my dad. I know that was a different show than we usually do, but to honor Veterans Day and to do it by sitting down with Dad and getting his story about his time in Vietnam, well, that was really, really cool. Really cool. Got me some major brownie points. Let me tell you, Dad even told me I was back in the will. So I asked him to put a spending freeze on everything since I'm back in the will, and maybe I'll get something in the end. Anyway, thanks for listening to all of that. If you did miss that interview last week, you definitely should check it out. You can find it on Repcolite's YouTube channel. It's worth a watch. Check that out. All right, on the show, moving forward, on the show this week, I'm going to be spending some time going back to the topic of two-tone walls. We're going to talk about some frequently asked questions that come up when trying to, pull off two-toned walls in your home. And we're also going to dig into the nitty-gritty and talk about how to do it, everything you need to know. We'll also be talking about how to store masking tape. How to store masking tape. That's what I called the segment at first. But I guess I just did now. But when I was looking that over as I made my notes, I realized that was utterly ridiculous. Who in their right mind would tune in to listen about how to store masking tape? That is insane. Nobody wants to hear that. So I went back to the drawing board, and here's a couple alternate titles for that segment. I really like these. Tape Tales, how to keep your rolls fresh and fabulous. That's got potential, right? Kind of sounds like a weight joke. But still, keeping your rolls fresh and fabulous. That's coming up next. I'd tune in for that. Or how about this one? Keeping it cool and sticky. Your guide to happy tape. Whatever. You pick what you like. You can choose either one of those. The bottom line is that we're going to be talking about how to store masking tape coming up. But it's going to be fun. All right? Right now, though, I want to talk about the holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. And to get me going on this, I want to start with the elf. You know what I'm talking about, I think. Elf on the Shelf, we got one long ago when they first came out, and it honestly started well. The kids named him Tinsel. It was funny, it was cute. Ours only ever hid, which was good. That was his thing. He didn't do naughty things or make messes or any of that. He'd have been short for this world if he tried any of that baloney in my house. No, our Tinsel, our little elf, just hid. And every morning, for like 14 mornings in a row, the kids woke up and they were excited to go looking for Tinsel and to find him. And then on the 15th morning, that's when I realized this whole idea might not be as great as we thought. On the 15th morning, I realized that Tinsel had hidden in pretty much every single reasonable place in our home. And I know what you're thinking. 14 places, that's it. Come on, you're being ridiculous. No, that's it. He could have hidden in a drawer or in a cupboard or in the freezer, behind the ice cream carton. It's been there since July. Could have hidden behind those. And yes, that ice cream, it's in there since July for a number of reasons. First off, there's only a little left in it. Not enough for anybody to eat, so it stays there. And secondly, it's freezer burned, so nobody wants it. And of course, nobody throws it out because remember, there's still a little bit in there. So anyway, he could have hidden behind that carton of ice cream or in the cupboard or whatever. But with little kids, the little elf has to be at least findable, or they get mopey. And then they cry or they drag their feet in the morning. And then they make everybody late for school because they were looking for Tinsel and he was just in the cupboard or behind the ice cream. And they never would have looked there. All right. So, yes, there really were only about 14 places that Tinsel could hide and be relatively hidden, but still be able to be spotted by the kids. And when day 15 came around, Tinsel started repeating his spots. And the kids did not look kindly on that. The groaning began. Tinsel's in the same place again, Dad. Blah, blah, blah. Complain. You know how it goes. You've got kids. You've got grandkids. So that's what happened when he hid in the same spot. And then, God forbid, some nights after a long day at work and a long evening, entertaining the children, working around the house, cleaning, doing 8,000 different things. God forbid Tinsel's parents, or, whatever we were, forgot to help him hide and find a new spot some evening. Oh my, those were bad days. With that dumb elf, it got to the point where I'd wake up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. I'd start awake, sit up and think, crap, Tinsel, he didn't move. Worse yet, I'd wake up on some mornings and I'd hear the kids already walking through the house, looking for him. And then I'd remember he never moved. So I'd have to sneak through the house, peeking around doorways, crawling behind furniture, trying to get to Tinsel and move him without being spotted. The last time I did that, I remember crashing into my chair, my heart pounding, like I just infiltrated some top secret government base like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, and just sitting there and realizing things had gotten out of hand. This was ridiculous. And that's just my story, with our little elf on the shelf. And our elf only hid. I get that. Some other people have elves who cause creative mischief. I can only imagine the stress of maintaining that. Now, all of that to say, if you need to walk back the elf in your family, walk back the elf. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know if any damage is done to children, permanent or otherwise, but I'm assuming they're going to be fine. The damage done to parents is almost incalculable, and everybody's going to be happier when mom and dad are happier. So if you've got to walk your elf back a little bit, go for it. And yeah, I'm making a bit of a joke, but I do think the core of everything that I just said is really true. As the holidays hit, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, as we move into this season, parents and grandparents put an incredible amount of pressure on themselves. We worry about, making the perfect get-together, right? Cooking the perfect meal, finding the perfect outfits for the kids. I think women worry about that. Guys don't worry about that so much. We'd put them in a pillowcase if that would work. Just put a belt around it. That's good enough. But women will worry about perfect outfits, creating perfect greeting cards, getting just the right photo for the greeting card for this year. All of that becomes stress. We worry and we agonize over Christmas presents, finding the right ones, the best ones, the most fun ones. And then if you've got more than one kid, you worry about keeping all of it as even as possible. We're juggling all of that. And then we start seeing the neighbors put up their Christmas lights, all the lights around their home, and the pressure of that starts building up in our minds. Do I have to do that too? Should I? If I'm going to, I better do it soon. Weather's only going to get colder. All of that's playing. You know what I'm saying, right? You live in this zone too. And then we start seeing homes, on Instagram, Facebook, social media, whatever. We see homes that are so impeccably decorated that it's crazy. They're like Currier and Ives postcards. It's annoying. They're perfect. They're flawless. It's like Father Christmas himself lives there. And then we look around our place and we see our paltry stuff. Old ratty stockings, this Charlie Brown Christmas tree that isn't intentionally, a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. It's just really that old. And that's sad. And then some guy, comes on the radio from Repcolite and periodically talks about, hey, why don't you paint something? So your guests don't hate your home when they come over. You got to hate that guy. Anyway, all of that adds up, and it all becomes guilt. It all becomes frustration. It leads to envy. It leads to jealousy. It just leads to all kinds of sadness. And maybe that's small doses of those things that you experience. Maybe it's bigger doses. Who knows? But even if it's small doses, those things are certainly not in the spirit of the season. Now, I've got 5 kids. My mom has a ton of grandkids. I know what I'm talking about here. I know the stress that the holidays can bring. And I know it's often the case that we go into them pumped up and excited, right? We're heading into Thanksgiving, and then it's the journey to Christmas. We're excited. A lot of new stuff's going on. It's great. And then all of a sudden, we're going to wake up on a morning and we're going to look at the calendar and it's going to be Christmas Eve. And we're going to wonder, where did this whole season go? For me, I fill mine up with busyness. Things that are worthwhile in and of themselves. But, at the end of the day, things that really, aren't that important. They're just busy. So where am I going with all of this, with this long ramble? What's the point? Well, the The main thing I'm trying to say is that it's okay and it's important to cut yourself some slack. Give yourself a break. Put the elf on the shelf and leave him there. Or put him back in the box. Or get him some cement shoes. Visit the pond in the condos where grandma lives. Whatever you've got to do, just saying, find a way. Distance yourself from that little guy. Don't stress yourself out about the meals. Don't agonize over the decorating or the outdoor lights. If it's fun to you and it helps you celebrate, well, go for it. If it's a burden, if it's a job, maybe cut it for the year. Go easy on the present stress, the gifts. Lighten up on the Instagram holiday home comparisons. Now, I know that is ridiculously easy to say. And I don't usually listen to my own advice in this regard anyway, but I'm trying to do better because I'm right. I'm really right about this stuff. Every year I go nuts trying to be so unbelievably creative with my gifts for the kids. I put hours into brainstorming. I create spreadsheets, people. I've talked about that before. It's real and it's weird and it's a problem, and I do it. I do it. Spreadsheets. I've got spreadsheets going back years. I peruse them sometimes just for the fun and the memories. It's crazy. I put superhuman effort into these things. And then with all of that said, the other day we were sitting around and we started talking about Christmas, and I realized nobody can even remember what presents I bought for them last year. And they were great gifts. They were brilliant gifts. I had to bring out the spreadsheets, and everybody said, oh, yeah, that was really good. But really, at the end of the day, gifts don't live in people's hearts and minds. Obviously, what the kids remember from last year, from that conversation when we were sitting around, what the kids remember from last year's Christmas most vividly is this. They decorated our 20-year-old artificial tree for the first time, our little Charlie Brown loser tree. I usually own this task because I'm nitpicky about how it looks, but they did it last year and they did it up to my standards. They still remember that. They remember that for Christmas Eve, we had a meal of pickles, olives, a charcuterie board, meatballs, and little wieners, wrapped in crescent rolls. In fact, the other day, I bought a jar of the same expensive pickles that we had last year at Christmas Eve, Sucker Punch pickles, something like that. Andrew ate one and he said, tastes like Christmas. Right? So they remembered that. They remember that we ended Advent and launched into Christmas by going to Mass at midnight at the Basilica of St. Adalbert in Grand Rapids. They're altar servers at that Mass, and it's the pinnacle of Christmas for them every year. We get home around 2 a.m, and everybody feels like we've truly experienced Christmas. Now, I say all of that for me to remind myself that that's what the kids remember. All of those little things. So many of the things that I agonized over and stressed myself out about are things that they don't even remember unless they actively start racking their brains or check out my spreadsheets. All of the money that I spent on gifts is just money spent on things that sat in a drawer or on a shelf or whatever for the better part of a year. All of the stress about having a perfectly decorated Christmas home like my grandma used to have was really silly at the end of the day. For me, one of the kids' main happy Christmas memories is the sad little tree they decorated. Every year I tell myself that if everything isn't a big production, if it's not movie magical, that somehow the experience is going to be less. That my kids won't have the best memories of Christmas and the holidays and blah, blah, blah. That is so messed up. That's not what's important, right? We all know that, but we forget it so easily. What's important is being together, enjoying each other. That's what's important. Now, I know that not all of us have that luxury anymore. Kids have moved out. We've lost people. And I can guarantee that anybody listening who's in that boat and who's remembering back to those days when their home was full of people and little voices, none of those people are thinking that the season was great because of all that busyness and the presents and the decorating. It's the people. It's always the people. People can be the worst, but they're also the best. So for anybody who needs to hear it this year, slow down as we head into the holidays. Take a breath. Ease up on yourself. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, they're all going to succeed even if we don't perfectly execute every meal, every gift, every moment. All right, that's my 2 cents. That's how I think we all survive the holidays this year and really get the most out of them. All right, that's enough of that. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about tape tails, how to keep your rolls fresh and fabulous. Sounds amazing, and it's next. Stick around. And we're back. You're listening to the Repcolite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore, and it's time to talk about how to keep our rolls fresh and fabulous. I mean, that sounds amazing, right? It's our tape rolls. For anybody out there who's very curious about what's going on, how to keep your tape rolls fresh and fabulous. All this month, November, Painter's Blue Masking Tape, 1.5-inch blue masking tape, is on special at Repcolite. And whether you're buying it by a single roll or you're grabbing a box at a time, it's a great deal. And with that special in mind, I've spent the month kind of sharing some masking tape tips to help you get the best results. Today, let's talk about storage, because really there is a right way and a wrong way to store your masking tape. And of course, storing it the right way is going to get you better results down the road. So quickly, let's just move through some of these. First things first, you've got to, when you're storing your tape, keep it out of direct sunlight. You know, UV light isn't great for your masking tape. Over time, the UV rays can break down the adhesive, even if the tape is still in its packaging. So storing it in a bright, sunny spot, like on a windowsill in your kitchen, you know, let's say, like a nice little piece of decor. Storing it there or storing it on the dashboard of your truck, just laying it around on your workbench with the window right above it. All of those places aren't the best. They're not the best. Your tape is like a cockroach. Think about that. It longs for the darkness. Remember that. Give it the darkness. All right, second thing, store your tape in a cool, dry place. Extremes of heat and cold are masking tape's worst enemies. And really, when you think about it, when are extremes of heat or cold ever used in a positive manner for anything? You never read on a package of anything, store only in extreme heat, right? Or best if kept in extreme cold. You never read, well, wait, you might read that at a cryogenics lab. I suppose that's possible. Maybe likely. But for most situations, extremes of heat and cold are not your friend. Same is true with tape. High heat can turn the adhesive into a sticky, unusable mess. And on the other hand, storing your tape in very cold temperatures can make it less sticky, or worse, maybe brittle and hard to work with. Long-term exposure to cold can ruin the adhesive altogether. So the solution, store your tape in a cool, dry, climate-controlled area. Think room temperature and low humidity. You know, a shelf in your basement or an indoor closet is a great spot. Out of the sunlight, right? There you go. Third thing, and this one's kind of dumb and obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't unwrap your tape until you're ready to use it. That original plastic wrapper is going to keep it clean and free from dust and debris. And also, if your tape came in a cool little plastic container, hang on to that cool plastic container. It's there for a reason. It's going to protect the tape from dust and debris, but it's also going to protect the edges from getting damaged. So use that container as long as you've got the tape. And then afterward, use it for screws, nuts, bolts, buttons, whatever you want. Now, if you don't have one of those cool little containers, after you've unwrapped your tape, you could always store it in a Ziploc bag, and that will at least keep that adhesive clean from dust and debris, so it's ready to go the next time you need it. All right, last thing. Remember that masking tape has a shelf life. Depending on the brand, you're going to want to use your tape within 12 months of purchase for the best results. After that, the adhesive can start to break down a little bit, and the tape just won't perform as well. So if you're buying tape in bulk during this month's sale, plan ahead to use it within the year, or share some rolls with a friend. Christmas, after all, is fast approaching. Storing your masking tape properly, it doesn't take a ton of effort. It's not rocket science, but really, at the end of the day, it can make a world of difference when it's time to tackle your next painting project. So keep it cool, keep it dry, keep it out of the direct UV light, keep it in the little case if you've got one, and you're always going to have a roll that's ready to go, and work as hard as you do. It's going to work as hard as you. Think about that. You want your tape working as hard as you do. Unless you really phone your projects in, then you want it working as hard as somebody else. All right, there you go. That's how you keep your rolls fresh and fabulous. And that's what we want, right? Fresh and fabulous rolls. I know that's what I'm shooting for. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I'm answering some common questions about two-toned walls. That's just ahead. Stick around. Welcome back. You're listening to the Repcolite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore. And a couple of weeks ago, I talked about two-toned walls. And the main focus of all of that back then was to basically highlight 4 or 5. I think I got through 4 of them. I had 5. 5 brilliant reasons why you might want to give this growing trend a try in your own space. I only got through 4 of them. But that's what we talked about a couple weeks ago. If you missed that episode and you've got no idea what I'm talking about, you know, if two-toned walls, if that phrase is just, you know, like Egyptian hieroglyphs to you, well, audible ones anyway. If you're confused, let me just put your mind at ease. Two-toned walls, they're like accent walls, only cooler, right? We all know what accent walls are. So instead of thinking of one highlight color on a given wall, think of a wall with two different colors on it. Two-toned walls. They can be on a single wall, like an accent wall, or it can wrap the entire room. I'm sure that you've seen examples of this all over the place. It's a cool look. It's really popular right now, and it's an easy way to infuse a ton of energy and interest into a space. Like I said, a couple episodes back, we talked about why you might want to try them. Now let's talk about some practical questions that always come up when people think about doing this in their own home. And let's start here. Most of the time, when we see two-toned walls, we see the walls split either horizontally or vertically. Which one's right for your space? Which would you choose over the other? Now, I should say right off the bat, there are plenty of other ways to do this, but these are the two most common, so that's what we're going to look at. Now, vertically, let's start with those. And as you can imagine, when we're talking about splitting walls vertically, we're saying that the line where the two colors meet, runs from floor to the ceiling. It's a cool look. It can be really effective in the right setting. For instance, if you've got, one of those big open area spaces in your home, a big multifunctional room. You've got, your living room, your dining room, and who knows what else, all in one big space. A vertical two-tone design in a space like that can help you create separate zones, for lack of a better word. For example, imagine taking a new color and splitting the wall vertically right where your dining room table is. Doing that's going to create this kind of a cozy dining look without closing off the space, without actually making a dining room or anything like that. It just kind of gives you that feel. Another application of this that's kind of interesting, and I've seen it used most often in bedrooms, it's this, and it's really tough to describe on the radio. I'll do my best. But picture a neutral canvas color on all the walls in a plain square bedroom. But then in one corner, imagine that there's a vertical bar that's about 4 foot wide, comes out from the corner about 4 foot, and then it runs all the way up just one wall. Now, sometimes people will take that color and they'll actually carry it onto the ceiling in something like a 4x4, 4 foot by 4 foot square. Now, maybe that color on that stripe, that vertical bar, is a navy blue. Maybe it's a rich terracotta in that, otherwise neutral room. Who knows? The idea, or the main point, is that it's unusual. It's incredibly eye-catching, and what you end up doing is taking this boring kind of squared-off room and you create a nook. Often I see people put a reading lamp and a rocking chair in that corner, and even though the room has no physical architectural nooks or cozy little areas, they can visually create something, a reading area, a writing area, a relaxing corner with just paint. Now, you could do a lot with something like this. It's really cool. You could take that color and put it on the two walls that meet in that corner. Just come out 4 foot onto each wall and then leave it off the ceiling. Put it on the ceiling. Either way, it's going to create a very defined nook in that corner. It's an interesting concept. It demonstrates, the power of paint and creativity to do some really cool things in even the most plain and potentially boring spaces. So, vertical two-tone walls. Before we move on, though, I got one other thing. One other cool benefit of the vertical lines is that they actually draw the eye up. So it's going to make your ceilings feel taller. So if you're working with low ceilings in a space, might be a simple trick to add some visual height, the illusion of height. I'm going to try this out with clothing. I think every piece of clothing that I buy from here on out, shirts, pants, whatever I'm wearing, vertical stripes. I want that illusion of height. I'm going to find out if it works. All right, flip side, horizontal two-tone walls. It's much more common, and for good reason. It's incredibly versatile. Typically, you're going to see the darker color on the lower portion of the wall with a lighter tone on top. And normally this happens because the darker colors usually visually just feel heavier. They visually feel heavier. I think you know what I'm saying. They just seem heavier, so grounding them at the bottom just feels right. But you know what? Rules, throw them out the window if you want to. You can break all these rules. You can flip that. You can put the darker color on top if you want a cozier, more intimate vibe. This can work really well in rooms with high ceilings. Now, also, as we mentioned last week, horizontal walls are also great for optical illusions. We talked about how the vertical lines draw your eyes upward, give the illusion of height. Horizontal lines are going to give the illusion of distance. It's going to make a room feel a little bit longer, maybe make a hallway feel longer. Who doesn't want that? Wants a long hallway in your home. Maybe your hallway's too stubby. And it's always bothered you. You wished you had a longer hallway, but, you didn't want to add on to the house just to have a longer hallway. Horizontal lines, two-tone walls in that hallway might give the illusion of length. They also mimic the look. We talked about this last week as well. They can mimic the look of wainscoting, paneling, something like that. And a solid color on the bottom half gives you that vibe, that classic wainscoting vibe with no woodwork required. So easy to redo down the road. That's more of a reason why you'd want to do it, but that's what you're going to get with the horizontal lines. So basically, you can divide your room with the vertical, you can divide it with the horizontal line, and both can work and help you achieve different results. All right, another big question when it comes to horizontal lines is, where do you draw the line? I'm a person who needs details. I always have been. I was that kid. Parents, maybe you have a kid like this in your home, but I was that kid who asked, when's dinner, right? Most kids ask that. But when mom would say around 5:30, I'd say around 5:30? Or are you saying it's going to be 5:30? Or are you saying 5:32, 5:35? Could it be, earlier than 5:30? And if so, how much earlier? I was exasperating. I know that. If my parents said they thought it would snow, I wanted to know how much and when, and if school would be canceled. And if they said maybe, I don't know, then I drill into what that meant. What does maybe mean? Is maybe 40% chance? Is maybe just a 20%? I need details. That was me. And I'm still that way as an adult. I'm an absolute pleasure. I'm an absolute pleasure to be around. Anyway, when I do something like this, think about bringing, two-tone walls into a space. I need to know the exact measurements for that dividing line. I need to know, is it 48 inches? Is it lower? Is it higher? How much higher? Where's the proper place to draw that line? That's how my brain works. Well, if you're like me, turns out there's some bad news for us. There's no hard and fast rule. Generally, the line is about 47 inches from the floor. And of course, I'm talking about horizontal lines here. Generally, it's about 47 inches from the floor, but you don't have to stick to that. Not in the least. You could line it up with a piece of furniture, like your headboard in the bedroom, or with architectural features like a chair rail or a mantle, anything like that. And if you're totally stumped trying to figure out where to draw that line, where to bring that line, a window, a door frame, even a shelf, all of those things can act as a natural place to start or stop your line. You can match the line exactly with whatever piece you're looking at, or you can offset it slightly, up to 12 inches above or below if you don't want to feel too exact. It's really that fluid and free. It really is entirely up to you. And for some people, that's incredibly freeing. For people like me, man, we don't know what to do with that. We're going to spend days, weeks, months just thinking it through. Anyway, that's the dividing line. Another area where we run into questions is the color. The color is the most exciting, the most fun, maybe the most overwhelming part of a two-tone wall. But again, in this situation, for normal people, there's good news. It's actually easier than picking a color for an accent wall. And that's because the two colors that you're using on these walls often balance each other out a little bit. We talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago. But, you're only using half the color for one thing. So you can go with a darker color, a bolder color, and you're only using half of it on the wall. And the second color that you use generally kind of balances it out a little bit. If you're completely unsure where to start, neutrals, they're always a safe bet. Gray and beige, they'll work. But remember, something really important to remember is that neutrals can mean a lot of different things. Subtle tones like a blush pink or a soft sage green, those can be neutrals to some extent. So can darker tones, like a navy blue or even a black. All of those can be neutral tones. So you could go with neutrals. That's an easy way to go. Another way to go is, basically a tone-on-tone approach, maybe a light and a dark version of the same, basic color. If you do want to push things a bit, you can go bold with a bright accent paired with a neutral for balance. Remember, like I just said earlier, you're using less of that color, and that means you can push a little more when it comes to the color selection. You can go darker than you might have been willing to go with an accent wall, or brighter or bolder, because you're using less of it. So if you need inspiration when it comes to color, look online. Social media is full, absolutely full of two-tone wall ideas. And remember, Benjamin Moore color samples are your best friend in this situation. Grab a couple of them, and you can test out the color on your walls before you commit. Now, all right, we're reaching the end, but one last consideration that's worth mentioning is the ceilings. What do you do with them? Well, two-tone walls give you a lot of leeway here. There's a lot of different ways you could go. For one thing, you could just keep it classic and stick with just a plain white ceiling. That's absolutely fine. That'll work really well. If you want, you could take it up a notch by extending the top color of your two-tone walls, your horizontal two-tone walls. You can extend that top color onto the ceiling. This is going to erase that harsh line between the wall and the ceiling. It makes the room feel a little more expansive, and that will work with light colors or darker colors. With darker tones, you're going to end up with a rich, dramatic look. With lighter colors, it's going to feel a little more airy and open. Either way, it's a win. Really cool way to go. Again, look online for inspiration. There's a ton of ideas out there. Check those out. All right, that is enough. Whether you're trying to define a space, add height, or just have fun with color, this is a project that really delivers big results with just a little bit of paint. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, let's breeze through a quick how-to on this project. How do you get the sharp line? How do you make sure that it's straight across the room? I've got all of that in just a minute. Stick around. Back. You're listening to the Repcolite Home Improvement Show, sponsored by Benjamin Moore, and let's talk right now briefly about how to paint two-toned walls. And let's start with the basics. First thing, you need to paint the top section of your wall. So you've got to choose your colors, and then you need to decide where the colors are going to meet. As we talked about in the last segment, deciding where that meeting line is going to be, it's pretty much up to you. There's no hard and fast rules here. You can split the wall evenly in half. You could add a higher or a lower dividing line. Entirely, it's up to you. Either way, figure out where that line's going to be, and then you grab a tape measure and you mark that point at numerous spots across the wall, and if necessary, around the whole room, if that's how you're going to do it. When you do this, be sure to keep those marking lines light. You need to see them, but they don't need to shout at you. Right? Just need to see them a little bit, so keep them light. If you want to take this whole step up a notch, really add some technological cool to the project and get better results along the way more easily. So better results, it's technologically cool, and it's going to be more easier is how we normally would say that. If you want to do that, consider using a laser level. It's a game changer. It'll project a perfectly straight line across your wall, saving you tons of time and ensuring that your line is straight, level, all of those things, even if your floors or ceilings aren't perfectly level. And it's a laser. Did I say that? That alone tells you everything you need to know. There are a lot of them out there. If you go looking, the prices can vary pretty dramatically. DeWalt makes a good one that you could snag for right around $150. If you have other projects that you tackle where a laser level might be handy, it'd be a great tool to grab. We're going to look at them more deeply in a future episode, but I did want to throw that idea out there today. Laser level might be the way to go. Anyway, once you got your line, start painting the top section of your wall. And when you're doing that, it's really important that you don't stop painting right at that dividing line. Paint slightly past it and then feather out those edges. Thick, abrupt paint lines at that edge are going to create problems for you down the road. So roll past that marking line, that laser line that you set, and then feather the paint out. If you can do it with your standard roller, fine. Do it that way. If you need to, if that's a struggle for you, use the Wooster Jumbo Coater system for this. These are 4-inch roller covers, 4-inch rollers and covers. We talk about them all the time on the show. They're incredibly, incredibly handy. And what makes these Wooster Jumbo Coaters so brilliant is that the tiny little mini roller covers that you're using, that you buy for them, they actually perfectly match their bigger counterparts. So if you stick with the Wooster products through the whole project, you can make sure that the roller cover nap, the texture and all all of that matches perfectly, even though you switch to the mini roller to really, feather out those lines. Now, that may not sound like a big deal, but using different roller covers for a part of the wall can really show up in your final results. Roller textures can look different. It can affect the finish on the wall. It can even affect the way the color is perceived, on the wall. So these jumbo coaters from Wooster, they're a great tool for any painting that you do. Grab the frame and then the covers that match the larger Wooster covers that you like to use, and you're going to be set. You're going to like that. All right, lots of blah, blah, blah on that one. But to summarize, create your dividing line for the colors and then apply your first color to the wall, bringing it slightly past that line and feathering it out. Really simple. If you need to do a second coat, do that before moving on. Just be sure to really feather the paint out once you get past that planned dividing line. All right, second step. After that top color dries for at least 24 hours, at least 24 hours. And I'm going to say that one more time because this is where problems can happen. After that top color dries for at least 24 hours, longer if you can give it longer, after it's dried for that amount of time, then it's time to tape off that dividing line. All right, so set up your laser level again or carefully mark the walls really lightly this time at the dividing line and then apply your masking tape. Now, I have two recommendations here, and only two for this particular part of the project. Yellow frog tape is one option. Also, 3M makes a delicate surface tape. Both of these tapes are made to release safely from a freshly painted surface. Other tapes most likely are going to cause problems for you, and you're going to end up peeling off fresh paint when you remove the tape. Now, frog tape, it's got a special coating on the tape that reacts when water-based paint touches it. It instantly seals the edge of the tape, preventing bleed through. I've personally had great luck with the yellow frog tape, that safe release frog tape, and that would probably be the one that I'd use in this situation. But either that one or the 3M tape, the Delicate Surface 3M, should give you great results. So apply that tape, and normally I'd say that you would press the edge down, the edge that's going to be painted up against. I'd recommend that you press that edge down tightly with a putty knife to seal it, but I'm not recommending that in this situation. The paint on your wall that you're taping over is way too fresh. Don't use a putty knife here to seal that edge. Instead, there's another trick, and I would do this even if I was using the frog tape. Once the tape's down, go back with your first wall color and paint it lightly over the edge of the tape. If you're trying to imagine the scenario, I know it's not easy on the radio, but think of it this way. You've got your tape down and you're getting ready to paint your second color on the bottom part of the wall. Before you do that, get out the original color and then lightly paint about an inch or so of that lower portion, right up and onto the edge of the tape. Make sure that you feather it out really well. You still don't want thick lines here, but just a little bit of that original upper wall color on the lower half painted over the edge of the tape. That's what you're looking for. Now, you do this because if there's any paint that bleeds under the tape, the color that's going to bleed through is going to be the color that's on the upper portion of the wall. Essentially, that's sealing off the tape edge, and it's creating a flawless, absolutely razor-sharp line when you paint your second color. So do that and then let it dry completely before moving on. All right, last step. You got to paint the second color on the lower section, the bottom section. And when you're doing this with that second color, you're going to want to be careful as you work up to the tape. You don't want to accidentally, roll onto that upper portion of the wall that you finished. So just be a little careful as you go. Put a coat on and let it dry. And if you need to, you're going to want to apply a second coat with the same kind of care. All right. Now, a couple things here, a number of things. First off, don't wait too long between coats. Follow the product recommendations for time between coats, but don't let that tape remain on your walls for too long. Even though it's safe release tape, you want it off the wall as soon as possible. Now, that's one thing. Second, when you're getting ready to remove that tape, it's likely that paint from your lower section has been rolled up onto it, onto the tape. And if that happens, there's probably a paint film that stretches from the tape to the wall. If you just tear the tape off without dealing with that paint film, you can actually tear into the paint that you just applied. It's a real pain in the neck. To prevent this, get an X-Acto knife or another, really sharp razor, and then lightly, extremely lightly, run that blade along the edge of the tape, cutting that paint film. That's going to score that film so that when you remove the tape, it's going to remove cleanly. Also, safe release masking tape, like frog tape, like the 3M tape, it's way less likely to pull up your original color than other tapes will, but you still want to remove it slowly and carefully. All right, there you go. 3 relatively easy steps to dramatic Dramatic two-toned walls. The trick is patience and the right tools. Now, I know I flew through that. If you'd like to go back and read it slowly and just get a little more information, you can head to repcolite.com. I've got a blog post up that'll walk you through all the steps. You can find it right on the homepage. All right, that's all the time we've got. We're going to wrap this one up. If you want to catch it again, you can find it online at repcolite.com. Whatever you do today, make sure paint's a part of it. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody, and I'll see you next week. I'm Dan Hansen. Thanks for listening.